Thank you very much, and a pleasure to be here today. And thanks to everybody in the audience for taking the time out and joining me today. So it was interesting listening to the previous presentation where technology played such an important role, and it does play such an important role when you're talking about e-government and the different services. And specifically, there was a line in the presentation about improving existing services and launching new services. That well, just because it's fundamental about making sure that e-government meets its goals. But before I get into that, just so everybody's on the same page, talking about, and certainly with my personal experience, having lived in 3 different countries so far in my life, and seeing the commonality between these different countries anytime that you had to go ahead and deal with the government. Now, of course, I'm originally from the United States, and at the age of 17, getting my first driver's license and having to go down and get it. And then as I changed residence to different states and having to change the license, having to renew the license, this was akin to going to the dentist. It was always an unpleasant experience because of the amount of time that it would take, the people that you would run into. Frequently, the people working in the motor vehicle division were not particularly customer service oriented or customer service friendly. So it was one of those necessary evils, the price you had to pay for the luxury of having a driver's license. Now, the other 2 examples certainly I think are shared around the world, going to the post office, and as the post office in different countries assumes more responsibility or more roles beyond just delivering mail, those lines tend to get longer and longer. And trying to get to the post office during peak times before a holiday, again, number 2 on the list of dealing with the government. And then, of course, any other instance or any other, not excuse, any other reason to have to go in person, renewing a passport, dealing with tax bills, whatever the case may be. Now, so this is what government has been imprinted in our minds as long lines, unfriendly service, and a waste of time. So what is the promise of e-government? Well, we can dream it, think of this as a fantasy of a large, spacious office, the people working there at their very chic Apple computers have all the information they need at their fingertips. They don't have to go out and get paper files and come back and realize they don't have the file they need and have to go back and get it again. And then if you do need to go to the office, there's space to have a small meeting, as you can see in the back, or a workspace, the gentleman in the red tie. It's an atmosphere that says we're here to get the job done and to get it done properly. So that question is, again, is this reality or is it fantasy? Well, I suppose that depends on how it's implemented and what the motivations are, but it certainly is capable of being a reality. And when we look at what e-government is there to do, as I mentioned before, it's about improving existing services and being able to introduce new services on the same platform. Now, I happen to live in France, and in the French system, we have a fairly that I for the vast majority of things that I need to do. I can't do everything by it. I have to go to another website to pay my taxes. I need to go to a third website if I have to do something about my car. So it's good, but it's not as good as it could be. But what it does do is give me good access from home. So this idea of reliable and secure remote access, I'm reassured that my internet connection or my connection from my computer at home is a secure connection using technology SSL, and I don't worry about that because what we want to do with e-government and more of these services, self-service. So having reliable and secure remote access, whether I'm calling in, connecting in from home, while I'm traveling, I'm at the office, it doesn't make a difference. I want the same experience every single time. But there are always instances where it is necessary to go into the office, to go to the government facility, whatever it may be, because just sometimes you can't escape having to deal with somebody face to face. Now, while you're there, it's ideal that there are self-service capabilities, that there is guest Wi-Fi in the building that you can take advantage of, or they have a self-service terminal so that while you're waiting for one thing, you could be doing something else. Now, what enables all of this, of course, because we're talking about technology, what enables all of this is absolutely there's data protection and integrity. There should never be a worry that my social security number or my identification or anything else that I'm doing during my transaction is going to be compromised. And I certainly don't want to see a headline one morning that the government network has been hacked and all of those records are now somewhere on the dark web being sold and resold. Well, the way to make all of this happen, of course, is the network itself. Now, I'm assuming no matter what country we're talking about, there is some level of technology, networking technology at play here, so that in the government offices themselves, whether it's the main building or a satellite building, there is a network to service the people working in that government service. There's also capabilities, as I just mentioned, for people. Now we're in a specific situation where most of the world is working from home. So I want to be able to access my records, the demand my services from home, or as I mentioned, from my own office, or when I'm traveling and I have a need to actually check on something. So on the left-hand side, we need to make sure that we have connectivity from any user and on any type of device going to the right-hand side, which are my applications. Now, today, most organizations are dealing with the applications contained in their own data center. On-premises data center, it's your own property, and due to the sensitive nature of that, this is the direction that most governments have taken. Now, that's also my access point into the internet, so that certainly for my internal use, the people working at the ministry, they're on the network, they have access to the internet. The same thing if I have to go to a government office and there is wireless access, I can use that to get to the internet as well. So this is a fairly well-established model I'm talking about here. But the disruption that comes from wanting to do more, wanting to embrace more technology to offer more services and truly transform the government, well, that changes the profile, not on the left-hand side, but really on the right-hand side, because now, in addition to my own data center and giving access to the internet, I might be looking at using public clouds, either to consume a service such as email with Microsoft 365, or one of the major cloud providers where I'm putting part of my infrastructure into that cloud. I still have my on-premises data center that I'm taking care of. Now, there's another idea here, this vision of edge computing about decentralizing or distributing the applications and the machines that they run on and put them throughout the network. Now, this model here is a major transformation from where we are today in most cases, and certainly where we were just a few years ago. Now, while this is an enabling environment to offer new services, to improve the existing services and do more than we ever thought possible, there's also a consideration that has to be taken into account. Now, these things, edges, you may have heard the term before, and the classic definition is about edge computing. So wherever I have compute capabilities, regardless of where it's located, that's my compute edge. But edge has come to mean so much more. And I'll stay on the right-hand side for a second. It's describing a boundary. If I look at the data center edge, that's a boundary between my wide area network and branch offices and those applications in the data center. The same thing with the cloud edge, whether it's a SaaS or an infrastructure as a service. That's a boundary between my network and going off to that cloud provider or cloud providers networks. But on the left-hand side, the part of the network that really hasn't changed, we have these edges here as well. And so my campus, my branch offices, my main facility and satellite facilities, they're going to connect to the network, probably using some sort of a public service provider, the local telephone company, or just plain internet connectivity. Well, however they do it, that's an edge because it's that demarcation point between the backbone of the network and these remote sites of the network. And the same with people working from home or accessing from a remote location. All of these edges exist. And then we can go another layer down and look at inside the buildings themselves. I have a network in a building and I need to access that network, whether that's through a piece of cable or through a Wi-Fi network. Well, those are edges on their own point. Again, it's a demarcation point. It's a way to access the network. And the key thing about it is all of these edges are vulnerabilities. These are the spots that hackers can take advantage of, cyber criminals can take advantage of to infiltrate the network and get access to the records that are in those data centers that are stored in those clouds. And so from a cybersecurity perspective, what we need to do is looking at how do we secure these individual edges because they all have unique characteristics. And one way I can certainly do it is just throw products at the products at the problem. That I have a problem, I look for a specific product to deal with it. The problem with that approach is that it tends to multiply, it snowballs till it's out of control. And I have so many products doing individual tasks that I just can't manage it. Now, each one of these products that you've put into the network to solve or address a specific issue, absolutely, it can be doing the job it's intended to do. But the issue is that it was never intended to work with the products to the left or to the right of it. And it's that environment that these vulnerabilities, these gaps develop that, again, hackers and cyber criminals can take advantage of. Now, over the last few years, we've seen a different approach of how to deal with this. And that's called a platform approach. And what a platform is exactly as it sounds. It's a foundation where multiple security technologies can be brought together, not as a collection of individual products, but in an environment where 1 + 1 = 3, that the integration between these technologies actually gives you more than what any one individual product can give. And you're seeing more and more vendors coming into this mentality, this platform approach, looking at integration. And from integration, you get automation, which makes the management of all of this that much simpler. Now at Fortinet, that platform approach is what we call the Fortinet security fabric. And we've broken the network down into 3 key domains. The network itself with all of those edges. That's one of the key pieces. Then the users and devices wanting to connect into the network to get access to the applications. And then finally, for those applications or that part of the network which is residing or leveraging cloud technology, having the right security technologies there. And it's these 3 pieces working together, brought together by a common denominator and supported by, first of all, threat intelligence, which is the idea of keeping up with the threat landscape. You can take the shiniest, greatest new box in the world. And if it's not kept up to date with the changes in the threats that the network is facing, that box, which is serving a useful purpose today, very quickly becomes a liability. So having threat intelligence supporting all of the technologies in your platform is crucial for this to remain relevant. Common management, common capabilities for both network operations as well as security operations. And then finally, knowing that no vendor has every technology you will need at every point in time where you need it, that the platform itself actually has an open capability that it can integrate with other technologies, other vendors, even if those vendors are technically competitors. There are points in time where they become collaborators. And it's these characteristics that you should be looking for when you're looking at a platform approach. And this is a model, a philosophy that Fortinet has pioneered since 2016. I hope I've given you a different perspective on it. Certainly, the idea of enabling the technologies that enable e-government itself, cybersecurity, keeping up to date with what's happening in the threat landscape is so crucial that without it and without its considerations from the beginning of any project, e-government will never meet its objectives. So again, thank you very much. And I look forward to speaking at another conference soon. Thank you.